We will be looking at the Dragboss 351 Cleveland brand new block coming up. The beginning of match race madness. It started with these two cars. The Chevy legends Joe Sherman, his son Steve is a driver, and of course myself. And more of Irwin coming up as well. We won and lost, and the Joe Sherman Racing team won and lost as well. It was a fairly even contest, and the best time we ever had when you're going heads up and when you test yourself with the best. And Joe is a legend. There's no other way to describe the man. Rest in peace. Good morning, good day, good evening, wherever part of this crazy planet you're tuning in from. Thank you and welcome to Ben Alameda Racing. Today I'm really excited to share with everybody else a new Cleveland block that's been out there in production. And no other than my good friend Tim Halstead from Dragboss Garage. He came up with this new Cleveland 9.2 deck block. Priority oiling is major improvement. He's got a one-piece rear main in there and a lot beefier block. I think the factory block is 170 pounds. This is topping off about 220. So just by the weight indicates to you there's so much more mass or meat to keep this doggone thing together. I tell you, years ago we ran a demodified production 351 Cleveland with a 4-speed, and that broke right there on the main caps, number 2, because it's straight through, and then the oil pan rail, there's not much support in there. It's kind of hollow, which I'll show you here in a few minutes. And that being said, the whole 4-bolt main cap came apart. I don't know if I can still call my buddy up. I think he saved it. I don't think he would throw something like that, because that was really a shocker for me when I first saw it. And the stock production 351 Cleveland block has the same issue with a doggone oil passage that's drilled across the number 1 main cap. But this time it's not so obvious on the Cleveland, because on the backside of the timing chain, or backside of the housing for the timing chain, and it is there as well, and it's an issue that Tim Halstead has also fixed. So all in all, I'm glad. All right, so we're gonna go through the finer details, but before I proceed, I would suggest, or I would recommend, that if you're really serious about building a doggone engine, all right, for racing or some strong quarter mile, not necessarily racing, but just a car that will run fast. I tell you, a 9.2 deck is superior to a 9.5 deck, by far. I've read those combination, and the 9.2 has the perfect, how should I say, balance between deck height and available stroke that is reasonable, 375 or 3.5 or maybe slightly less, all the way down to 325. Is going to be a revving engine, all right? And remember, like I always said, for the street, torque is king. For the racetrack, RPM is king. And you're not going to get the same potential RPM out of a 9.5 deck. Oh, but people will say, oh, but you can run a longer rod on a 9.5. Yes, you can. But there's a point of diminishing return. The longer the rod, the heavier it gets. You cannot conceivably say you're going to run a 3,750 stroke, okay, with a long rod. It doesn't make any sense. Now, weight is the penalty. 9.2 is perfect, and you know why it's perfect? Because guess what? The LS engines is actually a little bit over a 9.2. I think 9.250 or something like that, or 9.25. But it is an indication. It is the perfect bore and stroke configuration. Bore spacing is excellent. It's not as big as it could have been, but they're basically on the confines of the stock configuration. And guess what? The 302 is too short. The small block Chevy is too short. Okay, a small block Chevy is only a little bit over 9-inch deck. A 302 is 8.2. Okay, so 9.2 is perfect. Ford, Chevy, or even if Chrysler would have, you know, I wonder if they would come up with a new race block if they would have ended up with a 9.2 or thereabouts. That's where you can balance a 3.5-inch stroke or 3,400, or as low as 331, or perhaps 3,750. Now, for the street, where I say torque again is king, I would prefer a 4-inch stroke on a Cleveland type on a street car. But when you're building a car that's ghost. But if you're building a car that's a Fox body, let's say 2,800 pounds with you in it, that's light. Or I seen some 2,450 with a driver in it. When you close the door, you go boom, like a speaker box. Anyway, if you have something like that, and I tell you what, I'll take RPM with gears over cubic inches with tall gears. There's a certain point where it's not going to work out for you. You actually go quicker with gear ratio, all right? And until now, I still have people all say, oh, you got to run a power glide. You know what? Nothing against those people who want to go freaking 9 seconds. They say, when you want to go super fast, gear ratio is really a must-have. No wonder everybody's running a Pro Flight or a super lightweight Turbo 400, okay, from Kilgore or Pro Flight or whoever. You know, I'm not gonna tell people to run a C4. I gave up on the Ford transmissions. Just like Chevy guys run 9-inch Fords, Ford guys run Chevy transmissions. Turbo 350 is for a very fast street car or a Turbo 400. Okay, if you're really gonna squeeze on it or do whatever, I would prefer that. Okay, but a Turbo 350, I bet stock to me stood out better or could take the punishment over a C4. So not coming back to a 9.2 Cleveland, I suggest that's what you end up doing. And not only that, okay, with the Cleveland configuration, you don't have to mess with the water jackets on the end of the cylinder. You don't have to put an external water line coming out of the side of the head or the front of the head or the back of the whatever. You run the typical Cleveland configuration. Remember, let's just make this absolutely clear. 9.2, okay? Or let's start with small block Chevy. 9-inch deck or thereabouts, a little bit over. What's the issue with that? The deck height's too short. The cam to crank is too close. That's why when you start stroking it, you need to put a small diameter or a small base circle camshaft. Now, when you try to turn an RPM with something like that, you have twisting issues. If you look at the doggone Chevy stroker camshaft, this small journal cam, oh my God, scary. Okay, it's like a little stick. Now, that said, so 9-inch deck for a small block Chevy, 302, 351, I mean 302, 350, 327, 400, too short. Now, on a 9.2, perfect. 9.5, street, you can go cubic inches, torque is king, great. But remember, when you're right here at 9.2, all right, here's the center of the carburetor, or your fuel injection, or your throttle body, all right? Now, this is going to be an exaggeration. When you go taller deck, guess where the distance is? Now you're so much farther away from the center of the throttle body or the Dominator or whatever 4150 carburetor you're running. Now it's too long. You already have a lot of stroke from the taller deck. Okay? Then you have a longer intake runner. It kind of goes backwards for you. You already got gobs of torque and you made the runners longer. That's even more gobs still. All right? That's why, you know, if you're talking street mentality, when I ran my street car, that ran 1020 with a stock 400 crank that's been reground to 4170 stroke. And I just brake torque it to 1500 or 1600, whatever. Let go the brake, smash the pedal, boom, goes 1020 through the muffler. Excellent. But when we finally, like Jameson and I, we switched to a 9.2 deck later on, guess what? I mean, when we finally switched to a shorter stroke, we kind of realize our deck height's too long and the runners are too long. The perfect combination is a 9.2 Cleveland. That's where Tim Halstead is focusing on. Now you get the perfect stroke, rod to stroke configuration, and also you have the perfect runner length. Okay, you're trying to bring an RPM up. You don't want that runner to be longer with a big ass tall deck block. You're trying to bring the RPM up, you want that runner to be a little bit on the shorter side. Perfect for the 9.2. Excellent. It comes down. So there you go. That is where you want to be. All right? That's why the LS and the 9.2 Clevelands, remember they didn't build a lot of Windsor for racing back then. They relied on the 9.2 Cleveland and Trans Am the Boss 302 had a Windsor configuration, but that's another story. That was only made in 69, 70. Otherwise, a 351C, the Cleveland and the Mach 1, 71 on up, they're perhaps the fastest small block out there, especially for Ford. First, let's look at the factory Cleveland block and then the Dragboss for comparison. Here's a stock factory 4-bolt block. Notice the outer bolts are not splayed. So take note of that and we'll look at the Dragboss. The Dragboss bottom end, as you can see, main cap 2, 3, and 4 are splayed on the outer bolts. And it's a standard on the front, number 5 main cap. Notice the hollow oil pan rail that's shown here by the arrows. And that is a very weak spot as opposed to the Dragboss block. This is a Dragboss Cleveland. Notice the oil pan rail is filled up. Lots of meat there for strength. You're not going to have a failure with this kind of configuration. Here's a whole picture of the bottom end. You notice left and right side oil pan rail is all filled up. And they anchor all the 4-bolt main together, especially the splayed bolts. They got something to hang on and stay there. It's not going to pull out, not like the factory configuration. Here's the same problem with the Cleveland as it was with the Windsors. 302 worse and 351 just as bad. There's a drill passage on that bulge right there that you see. There's a drill passage for the oil sending unit. It makes it weak right there. No support. To the left of that X is where the threaded portion of the driver's side main cap bolt ends. Directly above it is the oil passage that is prone to cracking right there. Hardly any support on that one bolt holding that cap. Now you can see Tim Halstead beefed up that whole front main cap support. Lots of material there. Pretty much the same thing with the Windsor issues. That Dart and the other manufacturers added a lot of meat there. You're not going to break this. Look at the top of the lifter valley. See those holes right in the middle, front to back? They're pre-drilled crack enhancement holes, and they would fail. You see the crack do the same thing on a Windsor 302 or 351. It goes in between and every hole. All right? Now look at here. We have reinforcement ribs straight across, joining both banks. It gives it a lot of rigidity. You're not going to have any more failures. As you can see, these are details that perhaps if somebody built this block on their own without previous experience with Fords, they might have left this behind. So it's worth it when somebody builds these blocks that know what they're doing and they're familiar with the issues involved racing these things. The casting quality and the machining is great. If you notice the head bolts, they're not going straight to the water jackets. So that is a big plus. Unlike the 302, they go through the water jackets. The 351 says not. This one for sure, that's a good move. And of course, no freeze plugs. More like screw-in freeze plugs. Stiffens up the side of the block and keeps you from blowing a freeze plug just in case a head gasket failure and you ventilate the block. The freeze plug flies off. This is insurance. Good design. Before I forget, this thing comes with a one-piece rear main seal, and I love it. I'd rather pull back the transmission than to take down a messy oil pan. I guess some of you guys probably feel the same way. And trying to seal it up after, good luck. All right? Two-piece main is a pain in the butt. So what do you guys think about that block? Impressive, isn't it? There are others out there, okay? But since Tim Halstead has been really passionate about the Cleveland, I tend to believe his heart is in the right place. He's produced a bitchin' block for all-out racing, and I'm looking forward to probably when I finally get going, finish all my project and come up with my race car before I get too old and need a wheelchair to get inside it. I tell you, this is the way I'm gonna go. No doubt about it. Okay, a Cleveland block. Not no other's Cleveland block, Tim Halstead's Dragboss. And guess what? He didn't pay me to do this thing. I just believe in him. Okay? So anyway, guys, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Please, subscribe, like, share, and comment, and so we can keep this thing going.